John, hello.
Hello.
Oh, it's good to see you again.
You too. It's been a while.
You look super fresh. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm great.
You look-
I'm really
I
good.
said super fresh. You look excited.
I am.
To our viewers, hello. This is the first time on the new YouTube channel. If you're watching LinkedIn or Substack, no change. Today with me is John Gallagher. We're discussing observability, something you're very, very, very passionate about.
Yes, indeed I am. Yeah.
Agenda for today is going to be observability. You have an extensive background in Ruby on Rails. We'll talk about that. And any questions that do pop up during the stream, we will address them. Hopefully address to you regarding observability or anything adjacent to it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
People know you, I think, most from like the Ruby on Rails community, but you had a huge shift in your career recently. You're now a principal engineer at Dynatrace.
Correct. Yeah.
How would you like to introduce yourself? Like, how would you like to be? Well, what hat? You can wear many hats. I know you're also a very like a comedy enthusiast.
Yes. Yes.
Which hat are you wearing right now? What would you like to present?
I'm wearing my hat in terms of being a coach for my side business, which is called Joyful Programming. But also, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I am a principal engineer for Dynatrace, building some interesting things for them that I can't talk about. But yeah, so primarily I'm representing my side business today, although any questions about Dynatrace are welcome. I may or may not be able to share certain things, but yeah, I'm here representing my side business primarily, which is Joyful Programming, where I help senior engineers and above introduce observability into their apps, even if they know nothing about observability, do not know what it even is. I'm here to kind of,
I hear observability questions, notably from two different camps. One is, hey, can I cheat and not write tests and just focus on observability? Like, can I just test in production? And B, we have a lot of microservices. We need observability because I can't read my logs. And I have a gut feeling that both of them are sort of missing the essence. So, like, if you were sort of showing up to somebody as like an observability coach, what do you wish they would ask you to actually get to the nail, like to drive the nail home to like the core benefit of observability as a skill, as a philosophy?
Right. Well, my first question to them would be, what do you wish you could understand about your app that you cannot? And very often, if I ask this question, I would expect to kind of get a blank look because that's quite an abstract question. A more detailed question that would drill down into it is, what are you struggling with your app to diagnose, to fix, to understand? Oh, thanks, Andy.
Yeah, I can see on this comment. Do you want to put it? Finish your thought, please.
Yes,
so,
I will do.
What would you like to understand about your app? Why is it so important?
What would you like to understand about your app that you cannot right now? So a client came to me recently and said, for example, our app is slowing down at 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. and we don't know why. That could be one challenge that you would have. It could be a more kind of business related challenges. Hey, we don't actually understand where all our signups are coming from. It could be a very, very specific defect that you've
Or
encountered.
segmenting or cohortizing sales channels
Right,
or revenue
right.
channels.
Or it could be a very specific defect. Hey,
Mhm.
our sidekick background jobs are erroring out with no such method error on nil on this
Mhm.
line. We've no idea why. Can
But
you
that
help?
sounds like it has like a blurry line with product work, with analytics, with
Yeah,
like product metrics or operations in general.
definitely.
Um,
Like, it frustrates me no end that observability has become yet another thing that you need to do. It's almost like, okay, are you doing unit testing? We're doing unit testing. Okay. Are you doing TDD? Well, sort of. Okay, we're doing that, let's say. And now observability is like, that's how I used to think of observability. Oh,
mhm.
so some expert is coming in and telling me I need to do observability. So now I need to watch YouTube videos on what is observability because I don't understand what it is. And then people talk about logs and traces and metrics. So what? I need to learn all this extra stuff. And again, as you said, all of that is kind of missing the point.
And you need to install a library, and it
Right,
logs events, and the events go to
right,
a proprietary charting
right.
tool, and then the
And then
charting
like, what
tool.
about open telemetry? I've heard open telemetry is cool. Is that cool? Is it not cool? Is it on a trend? Oh, I hear it's really growing. What about
Good,
Kubernetes?
good. We have now reached the required level of confusion to match our audience. Just want to give a shout out to Andy. Friend.
Andy and I met when I was at Future of Web Apps in Dublin, as he says, in 2009. And I was at the time building a little software product I called Lapsus. So Andy was a huge supporter of me back then. So thank you, Andy. It's nice to hear from you again.
Thanks for coming, Andy. Wow, 10 years ago. Almost 10 years ago now. Whew, we're getting old.
Almost 10 years ago? 16 years ago.
Oh, 16 years ago. Oh my God. I got the. Sorry, brain fart. Wow. Yeah, okay. Wow.
Yeah, I met the
Wow.
creators of Intercom back then. I think they just started to build Intercom, or they were Des Traynor and Ewan McCabe. So and I remember Carson. Carson. Oh, his last name's just escaped me. But anyway, he went on to build Treehouse and a bunch of interesting stuff. So
Beautiful. So you said that you can't right now. There is some element of it's not regression, right? Because if we can, observability is not about regression testing in any way. Because if we can predict it, by definition, it would not fall into the realm of observability.
right,
Observability solves your enables you to ask unknown questions, new
right.
questions.
Right. So that is the cutting to the chase. That is the most valuable skill in observability, is being able to ask questions, new, unique, interesting questions that you've never asked before,
Mhm.
and be able to get an answer in seconds.
So it's platform work. It's not providing the answer, but the ability to voice the question and sort of get
Perfect.
data from your production system.
Exactly. And so if we're making it concrete, let's take it from the realm of theory into concrete.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I have a stack trace in some error tracking software. And this is how it all started for me. This is where my observability passion comes from, is that I was looking at these stack traces in these error tracking tools. So Sentry, Datadog, all of these other tools. And everybody at the time seemed to be saying to me, the message coming to me was, if you install an error tracking tool, then you'll be able to understand your errors. Seems reasonable.
Because you'll be able to look at the logs, and then maybe they get sent somewhere so that you can look at them in the
It wasn't
browser rather
it
than.
wasn't even that. It was
Yeah.
just like, install these error tracking tools and you'll be able to understand where your errors are coming from and be able to fix them,
Mm-hmm.
which on the surface of things seemed very reasonable. So I would spend hours and hours in these error tracking tools, looking at all these defects that we had in our Rails apps in various different teams. And with almost every single defect, unless it was trivial,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the error tracking software would surface them, which would be great. And then I would look at the stack trace and just think, well, I mean, that's coming from another part of the system. I don't know where that's coming from. And then I would look at the code and I would go round in circles, and I would just going round and round and round and just wasting loads of time. And eventually I started to think, well, it's probably just me. I'm just not a very good engineer, because I saw other engineers jump into these error tracking tools and fix the odd thing.
But error tracking only works if you did catch an exception, like you did write some equivalent of try-catch clause, and you changed the machine error to a more domain-specific error. Like if you actually went
correct, yeah.
So then it again becomes something you could predict, but now you're probably like bridging the gap between the small tactical errors that you could predict, and then putting a large group of those into an observable space so that you can figure out what you missed.
Totally. So if we
the error tracking is a dependency, not the actual solution.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a solution in some cases, but you're right. In the cases where we'd thought far enough ahead to realize, oh, this could go wrong, and so we're going to throw an exception. Awesome. Like the error tracking tool gives you everything you need. But very often these were errors that we couldn't have predicted ahead of time. So it would be something passing in. This is a classic one in Ruby, something passing in a nil upstream, then that nil gets passed to another service, and then that nil gets passed on to, and by the time you get to the error tracking tool, all of that context is gone. It's all gone. And so
you only see the tip of the iceberg. Like you
only
don't
see the tip of the iceberg, precisely. So finally I started getting so sick of this. In my specific team at the time, we had an issue where sometimes customers couldn't log in, but it was like once in every few weeks there would be some weird,
and it's a web app, just for context.
And it's a web app, sorry, yeah. And this web app was like 5 months old. So it was like almost brand new, and we couldn't understand why this was happening. And it would just happen every so often, like a Heisenberg sort of thing. And so we just kept putting it back to the backlog, add more logging, put it back to the backlog, add more logging. And we were just guessing. And I just got so sick of this. And so I went in, and I didn't realize I was doing observability at the time. I had no idea. I was just like, I just want more context. I want to understand the history, what happened before, what happened a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes before. And so I went in, I spent a day and a half just kind of improving our logs, adding structured logs into our app. And when this thing happened again, I want to be realistic here. We didn't instantly know why it was happening, but we had a bit more information. And then I added a bit more logging, and a bit more and a bit more. And gradually we started to see the context kind of grow. And then we finally realized, oh, it's a race condition. They're getting to the app here. They're getting to the app here. They're signing up here. It was basically one event was firing before the other. And we looked at the logs, and I still remember the day it happened. I was like, oh, this event is firing before this other event. And it turns out the entire architecture of the app was
race condition.
Did not support this race condition.
So a tool like Sentry, for example, I think it's the most commonly used.
Yeah.
Is Sentry an error tracking tool or observability tool?
It's both. Sentry are now adding all sorts of features where they're starting to blur the line.
Okay. So it's not just me that's a bit confused, because Sentry claims they're an error tracking tool, right?
Yeah.
But from what you said so far, being able to query the errors, group them, maybe do some fuzzy stuff with them, that is observability.
Yeah.
So when it shows P99 percentiles or least misery indexes about certain errors, that's more in observability territory. And the stack trace of a span, that's more error tracking.
So if we just zoom out, error tracking is a subset of observability.
Okay.
Observability is just, you've got this black box. It's got some behavior. Even if you've written it, I think we can all agree it would be foolish for any engineer to claim, I completely understand what my app is doing in production. I mean, people say that, but with a non-trivial app, that's, so you've got this black box, you've written the behavior, it's all good in your machine, you've run all the unit tests, you've allocated every single kind of business rule that you can possibly think of, all the edge cases. Like, okay, I think I know how this works. You put it into production, and now real people are using it in a real situation with all of these strange things happening very often. And so observability is taking this black box and instrumenting it so that you can understand from the outside of the black box what it's doing. So error tracking is indeed part of that, but it's a small part, and it's sometimes missing like the surrounding infrastructure to be able to make sense of that error. So it's still observability for sure, but it's a very, very specific kind of observability. And the more you shrink out that context, the more.
So I presented it more like a spectrum, but it's more like an onion that's sort of peeling and sort of getting better at.
Yeah.
And my assumption would have been that the error tracking is like a large part of observability. Like, what is that main skill that enables? So if the main skill that you described it is being able to ask new unknown questions of your production environment, what enables that? Like, what other than error tracking enables that? Like, what is number one on that? What is top of mind for you when I voice this?
The pattern that applies to everything, including error tracking and traces and metrics and logs and all these different signals, they're not pillars. This is what Charity posted about, Charity Majors this morning. These things are not pillars, they're signals. The one thing underneath all of this that links it all together is wide structured events.
Could you give us an example?
Right. So,
but by the way, you have a presentation. Do you have an example in there? You have a little cheat sheet with you today.
I do. Let's go to the cheat sheet. Yeah.
Okay. Just let me know when you wanted to take it back off, when it's no longer relevant.
Will do. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Swapping over to the cheat sheet.
So this is the what I call SOS, the steps to observable software.
Nice.
And so we start out with asking a question, some kind of an interesting question. We then move on to deciding which data we want to collect for that question. We build the instrumentation. We then use it. And at any point, then we can reflect, improve, and go back to previous stages. So it may well be we use that instrumentation and we say, oh, actually, yeah, we didn't really log the correct things. We didn't really add the correct traces, whatever the case may be. And so if we go down here, this would be an example of one event, a very, very, very obvious, very, very well used event that this is one of the events that I kind of start with.
Now, forgive me for being crude, but this to me seems like infrastructure work. That it's sort of, I don't want to get, if I'm using a framework or something like Ruby on Rails, I would prefer the framework does this for me and I don't have to get tangled up in the weeds of.
Yeah. And that is a very, that's like a Pandora's box kind of a question.
Is it? Okay.
There's lots of different telemetry libraries. There's open telemetry. OTel will do this for you. But there are other, like as part of Rails, this sort of comes out of the box. But we can go into what Rails
But it's a pattern language, right? So it says questions normally get answered if they're structured like this. It's easy to query if they're structured like this. So here's a pattern that you can follow to output that kind of structure. And then there's libraries that sort of translate what the framework does to that pattern, even if it's a bit fuzzy, so that you can at least query your errors in a way that is cohesive project to project.
Right. So we've got these 4 different kinds of events. And what I would encourage everybody to do is start thinking in terms of events. And this is a major, major shift in my thinking as well. When you're deciding on data, when you're trying to instrument something, what we're actually doing, what is quite difficult for many engineers, including myself back in the day, was to switch from querying the data in the database, which represents the current state of the world, to querying events, things that happened in the past. And that's the difference between figuring out what you have in your database right now.
And we have a question on that. So I think this is We had an anonymous user ask, so what's error tracking if the purpose of observing is to checkmate the error? I will take a stab at this, John. Forgive me for being
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
inaccurate. From my understanding, how I coach a lot of teams, and normally when somebody is sort of scratching their head and not sure why a bug is happening, what they're doing is they're reading the logs to try to brain parse what has happened and then try to replicate that on their local machine until they see the same logs, because by confirming replication, they can then isolate it down and then they can dig deeper into the problem. The concern, I imagine, here is that you're not guaranteed to be able to replicate it on your local machine. So if you don't have the guarantee, you might as well not waste your time and actually focus on learning from the production environment only without needlessly replicating it on your local machine. Because maybe it cannot be replicated on your local machine.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Is that close? Is that like you?
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with everything you said there. It's unclear what the question is. So what's error tracking for the purpose of observing is to checkmate error? I'm not quite sure what it means by checkmate
The
error.
way I interpreted it is that isn't error tracking enough? Like, like what's missing from error tracking that isn't error tracking? Like that's how I interpreted it.
Okay.
But I think my point here is that we often just read the error tracking to try to reproduce it locally, because for some reason we don't do that exploration on production. And I believe what you're saying is that no, there's no guarantee you can reproduce it locally. So make sure you can do the exploration on production.
Correct. Yeah.
Is that
that's absolutely correct. I would also say that error tracking is it is what it says. It's tracking the errors. It's saying you had an error, which is just like, I wouldn't even say it's valuable. It's non-negotiable at this stage. If you're not tracking your errors, you're in.
But there might be an issue that is not an error. And if it's not an error, then it is not observable. So you're saying log events even outside the context of traceable errors. So that you can ask the system a question, so that you can combine logs with errors rather than just trying to start from an error and try to.
So if it might help if I give a concrete example. So we had previous place, a Shopify store, a whole bunch of products in, and there would be a job that would run that would synchronize those with our local database. And so there was an admin console in our local Rails app where people could go in and change these products, and
warehouse management and product catalog stuff, and
that kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
So one day we got an error in our error tracking tool, and it said no such method on nil. And so we could see that it was happening in this sync job, but we had no idea the product ID that it was happening on. We had no idea of when, we knew when it was happening. We could see the job retrying. We had no idea what section of the shop it was, what product it was, what product line it was. All of this was opaque to us. We knew that there was something going on with this background job. There was something failing. So where do I start with that? What do I do with that? It's tracked the error. Good. We know we've got an error. Good. And why is it happening? No idea. Can't even begin to tell you.
So a naive developer would go into that and say, okay, it's there. I will add logging to it upstream, try to replicate it, try to catch it on the next run, and then and what you're saying is that this is foolish because it's not guaranteed, it's time consuming, and it's not guaranteed to find the issue.
Well, when you say add logging, it depends. So there is a way of adding logging that is incredibly unproductive. And there is a way of adding logging that is very precise and specific and will solve your problem, or at least gather the information almost immediately. And the difference is these steps that I'm showing on the screen.
Okay.
That's the difference. It's not whether you use logging, tracing, metrics, whatever. It's start with the question. So the question in this case was, okay, my first question was, which Shopify product is this happening on? So that's my question. What data do I gather then? Well, in that background job, when it goes wrong, instead of just blowing up, what I can do is say, at the beginning of the background job, either log or add a tag onto the existing log for the product ID that is being synced right now. So I added that, I pushed it. So that's the build stage. I added that. It was like 3 lines of code or something, pushed it. And then the next time it happened, oh, I've got the product ID. We're already further forwards. Awesome. So I go to that product ID and I realize there's something in that product that means it can't sync locally. Basically, it was, I won't go into the details, but there's something special about that product that meant it was being excluded from the sync. So I'm like, okay, right. So in that case, it was basically user error. The user had set up the product incorrectly in Shopify, basically. So then in that specific situation, I could go further and say, instead of throwing an exception in Sentry, because it's nothing a developer can fix, right? In that case, it's something for the user. So then I started to create some infrastructure which allowed me to send a Slack notification to the marketing team to say, hey, this product is missing whatever it was missing. And then we're shifting the responsibility from the developers onto marketing. And that means they accept the error. It's still an error, but I changed the code. So basically it didn't throw an exception anymore for that specific use case.
Okay. So the naive developer would try to cram all that information into the thrown error, into the tip of the iceberg. Like that would be like the gut feel sort of
you
stressed out.
You totally could do that and it'd be completely reasonable. And actually I would argue that one thing I preach quite a lot is with every error, there should be everything you need to fix that error. So if we had added into that exception the product ID and the product catalog and everything, in the error tracking tool, we could have seen all those attributes and instantly figured out what was going wrong. So it doesn't need to even be outside the error tracking tool. The principle is gathering the context. It's the context that matters, and it's often the context that's missing, which is why this log of events is so important.
So what you're saying is you're describing the process of good observability, and there are multiple correct solutions.
100%, yeah. Which is why it grinds my gears so much when people get hung up on the tooling.
On which library, on which
library are you using? Sure, that's like the implementation details. But that's the how. What's the what? What are we actually doing here? What's the structure that all of this fits into? And I've never really heard, not anybody, but very few people talk about that. And that's why I think these 5 steps are so critical. Because without the question you're trying to answer, you could just be here for months and months adding this, adding that. I see all the time these Jira tickets saying add logging, add tracing. Yeah, to do exactly what? To improve the observability. Great. Well, let's spend 3 months. And I almost guarantee you're not going to use any of that data. It's going to bump up your vendor bill.
Because it's pre-question.
Because it's pre-question.
We have a question already. Speaking of questions, can I turn off the presentation for a moment?
Absolutely, go for it, yeah.
Feels like we're doing a question round. By the way, if you're watching and you have questions, now's a good time to send them in. I do see we have 0 delay, so we're going to be snappy. Eddie, would you also add validation to prevent these types of errors going forward?
I love it. What a great question. Yeah, so of course, when it comes to a user changing things in your app, it should be validated, of course. In this case, we were using an external tool, Shopify, and we had a structure that we needed these products to be in. So it's out of our hands. We can't add a validation rule into Shopify. I wish we could have done. That would have been the perfect solution, because the user gets instant feedback when they're putting in the product. But there are a whole bunch of situations where
you could create an error, a validation, but not in a way that would make that error surface on the UI that the user was using on Shopify.
Oh, even better. That would be amazing. If we could change the UI in Shopify to say, sorry, you can't add this product. Please. Yeah. But the second best thing is, okay, we can't add it at the point where the user enters. Obviously, we shouldn't be allowing bad data into our system.
And the error
Also,
went to the wrong person. The
error
error
went to
went
the wrong
to the
person.
developer
Exactly.
rather than
Yeah.
the. Okay.
So one way of looking at it is we have all these general purpose tools.
Mm-hmm.
Shopify is one of them. Because it's a general purpose tool, the tool can't understand exactly how we're going to use it in our business context. So it can't provide that validation error that we need. That's impossible. It just can't do it. So what we're going to have to do, second best thing, is when it reaches our system, that's when we should have some kind of a validation error internally, but it's already got into our system at that point. And that's when observability and proper error tracking, proper context gathering is critical, because it's too late then. It is in our system, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
So in an
And
ideal world,
it will happen
absolutely.
again. If it happened once, it is very
Right.
likely to happen
Right.
again. So it might be
So
something.
so absolutely, in an ideal world, all the validation would happen around the edges. But then
Mhm.
there's all sorts of situations where there is no way of validating it at the edges. Race conditions, architectural issues. I could go on forever. There's lots of situations where. So
And maybe the validation requires so much context that if you had it in the first place, the error wouldn't be happening.
right,
A
and
race
also
condition, for
validation.
example, if you knew that the race condition could happen,
Right,
you would have thought about it, and then it couldn't happen.
right.
So it's
So
pointless
this
to.
is for like no, unknown unknowns is really
Yeah,
what
yeah.
observability is for,
Hmm.
and to some degree known unknowns.
Hmm. So would you I like your e-commerce example because it highlighted also this issue that unobservable issues bubble up to the engineer through some form of error tracking, and it's usually the wrong person. Like it's usually, unless it's infra, it's usually the wrong person to like it, again, assuming the product is test covered and it is not sort of like a typo didn't make it out to production that was caught.
Yeah,
It's generally the wrong person, right? Like it's either the wrong engineer or an engineer in the wrong department, or the CTO is anxiously looking at the logs and really it's like somebody else should be looking at them, or maybe it's a subject matter expert or a product person or the customer or a B2B representative of that customer, yada yada yada. So like what is the role of, because I have your diagram in mind. What is the role of observability when it comes to surfacing, sort of, playing telephone, like surfacing it to a different kind of person, to a different kind of user, to a different kind of professional, to get it away from the engineer's hands and to put it into the right hands, if I use that metaphor.
wow,
Um,
love it. So this is, I'd say, with a lot of the systems I've worked with, we are a lot of teams that I've worked with struggle getting the basics of, what I would call the basics. It's actually quite sophisticated for many teams to get their head around those, because we're still very new in observability. Observability is a very new practice. Software engineering, obviously, is still very, very new. So we're right at the very beginning. And what you're asking about is like, here I'm talking about the ABCs, and you're
mhm,
talking about like full vowels and consonants and long words with many syllables. So that's where I would love us to get to as an industry,
mhm,
is that the errors are surfaced to the right person.
yes.
So in order to get there, the first thing to do is let's understand these issues. Whether it's the business, whether it's the engineer, whoever it goes to, they should be equipped to understand what's going on. And I see the reverse as well, by the way. The number of times marketing teams come to me and have said, there's something weird in our numbers here. Well, can you help us? It's
Mhm.
like, actually, we're like, when you actually trace it back, the code is wrong. There's a unique ID that isn't a unique ID, blah, blah, blah. So
Aggregation, group bias going a little bit over or under, double counting. Like
yeah, double
it's
counting,
normal.
all
It's
this
just
kind of stuff.
data science is complicated.
That's right. So this audience mismatch problem
Hmm.
is an immaturity in the way that we deal with events in our apps.
Hmm.
It's an immaturity. So as an example, we should be able to have a massive log of events in an ideal world in our app of things that happen. Now, in an event sourced app, you've already got that. If
Yes,
you're
I
using
was
the
about
app,
to ask. Thank you
right,
for
you've
reading my
already got
mind.
that.
Yeah.
So I would say, and that's it. I haven't worked on many event sourced apps. I've heard that in
So
those situations,
I have.
observability
So
is a
yes,
breeze.
it's a breath of fresh air. Yeah, it's trivial. So when you're talking about events, logging events, specifically perhaps OpenTelemetry compatible event language, that pattern, you're talking about mimicking event-sourced behavior to some degree.
Yeah.
Right. So past tense,
Yeah.
facts,
Yeah.
idempotent operations.
Yeah.
Rather than event-carried state transfer. So event-carried state transfer being when this happens, send this event to a message queue. So it's not that. It's not copying state from the production environment to another environment. That would be event-carried state transfer, but rather recreating the, let's say, the beneficial aspects of what is missing that event sourcing provides. So having a factual event stream of the factual idempotent mutations in the system, rather than just logging everything that's happening, copying data needlessly, etc.
And the super cool thing is, once you've got that idempotent, that stream of idempotent events, things that happened in the past, as you say, then you can start to reason about, oh, actually, this event is more relevant for a marketing person than it is for a developer. This event over here is implying that something has gone wrong with this other system. One thing I've started to do in my event names in previous companies is introduce name spacing on them, because another thing that drives me mad, like people will have these events that's like I don't know, customer paid or something,
and then they need to become more specific, and it's like Pascal kebab case.
Right. And so there's no standards, there's no conventions very often. So I like to say, if you're doing DDD, perfect, you have a bounded context, maybe you're within the sales department, so it will be app.sales.customer.paid. So that's within the sales bounded context. So already we're way further ahead in terms of the audience that event might want to go to if it's some kind of an error. And in my perfect ideal world, you could subscribe to every error that had a sales bounded context, and then sales would have a dashboard where all of those errors would, and then the sales and engineers could actually work together on that.
It's how I also like to split up triage responsibilities. Normally startups I work with usually get buried at some point on like errors and bugs that just keep popping up, but they're so rare that it's questionable whether to solve them or not. And usually somebody is buried in triaging duplicates of duplicates of duplicates, and usually we split it up by domain, right? So each person can identify their own domain stuff because they have the most context there. And if they create an action, they can limit their, they can have a whip limit per domain, so they also don't get overwhelmed. So that if one domain gets overwhelmed, then they can escalate appropriately.
One other thing I should mention is I found really useful is you have this raw stream of events. And then what I did in the Shopify example I gave you was when I was posting that message to marketing, what's super interesting was I realized just giving them all this techie crap, they're just going to get super confused. So instead, I made a simple formatter that converted that raw event into something that the audience could understand. So you just have a message saying this product is missing this attribute, whatever.
And in event sourcing, then if you have events, then that's just a typical projector, and then you can decide, if you can narrow it down to a group of or category of events that you can predict, you can narrow it down to a projector, and then
this is why high cardinality attributes is so important.
Could you audience, by the way, sorry for getting super technical, just give us a question if it gets too detailed.
Please.
Or if we mention a word that might be
I'm just about
semantically diffused, but it might be semantically. I'm sure they understand cardinality, but it might be semantically diffused. Cardinality in a database index, which is how I learned that word, might be different than cardinality in an event.
I was about to give a plain English definition of what I
Fair.
So
Victor asked for the slides.
Absolutely.
If you were, this is live, right? This slide is live on your website.
Yeah, let me post in a link to it now. I am in here.
We're also live on Substack. Peter, Anton, I see you've joined. If you have any questions, I am watching. It's a good time to ask in case you're still with us. Okay.
So that's the link. If you go to the live stream in LinkedIn, I'll also message Dennis with the link to that cheat sheet because I see it. It's not coming up in the chat here, but
I see.
So yeah, high cardinality attributes. So we've got all sorts of attributes in these structured events. And I want to emphasize it's the event that's important, not the mechanism to deliver it. Now, the mechanism to deliver it is obviously still important.
But it's a dependency. It's not really part of...
Right. Traces, logs, metrics are a bit different, but we're talking about recording an event, however that happens. And so in our event, it's going to obviously be structured because nobody would ever think of creating an event that's just a plain text, right? Right. Okay,
Right.
good. Glad we've sorted that out. So yeah, you have this structured event. And in our
No,
case,
like I will log a message in plain text, and then I'll add 2 JSONs.
Right. That's
the
great.
Same message.
Yeah, that's great. That's and hands up, everybody.
We've all done
I
it.
certainly have. I certainly have. Has anybody put logger.info?
Yeah, like you log it and you info it, and there's a message, and then there's the
product
stringified
invalid.
object.
Product with ID is invalid. Please check again. Please try again. Oh, hate it. So instead of doing that, we're going to log a structured payload. And one of those attributes might be product name. Another one might be product price. Another one might be whatever else.
You do have some examples though. Like we are coming up on the third of our stream today. So this can be more example focused and question focused. If you could maybe give us some nuggets from the cheat sheet that might be relevant.
Right. So in this case here, we've got app.invoice.customer.id. So this is an ID, and a high cardinality attribute is just really any kind of an ID. So in my example with Shopify, the product name would be a low cardinality attribute because you can have many products with exactly the same name. In this example here, a customer ID is unique to that customer. And so therefore, the cardinality of that attribute is high. It's just how unique an attribute is, basically. The more unique an attribute is, the more powerful it is for drilling down into the exact root cause. So in my Shopify example, what's super cool was I put in the product ID. So basically, when I'm doing any event, any observability, the ID is the thing that I gravitate towards. That will be the very first attribute I log, trace, whatever, because it meant in this case, the moment I had the ID and I sent that through to my observability tool, when I was creating this message for marketing, suddenly realized, I can construct the URL to the exact product that's going wrong in Shopify. And so they could just click on the link. Didn't have to search in Shopify for product name or any of that nonsense.
It narrows the entire context down to an entity or like a aggregate, or at least the beginning, like something tactile to start the journey.
Another example, we had 100,000 logs. We were debugging an issue and we'd added the user ID, the customer ID, and I think the invoice ID, something else. And my colleague just said, how are we ever going to find this? Like, this is needle in a haystack. We entered one ID, bam, it was down to 10,000 entries. We added a second ID, and there in front of us were 40 lines showing the exact journey of a customer through our website. And we just looked at it. Oh, well, this is going wrong. Oh, they're reaching this stage before they reach this other stage. Sorted. Seconds, absolute seconds. So high cardinality attributes, aka IDs, are the way of going forwards.
And I just want to mention that the examples you're showing are showing a query language that is SQL-like, but this is not an SQL database. This is a event store because it is capable of having dynamic columns. So it's probably columnar or a timescale DB equivalent that is capable of dynamically indexing the event type. And it's not SQL because it's that might lead some people astray. It's actually an SQL-like language to query a event store.
Thank you. That's really important. So when I'm typing SQL like this, the reason I'm typing SQL is because I don't want to get into this cheat sheet. I didn't want to get into the specifics of, hey, in Datadog do this, in Dynatrace do this, in Sentry do this, because all of those are implementation details. If you
And they're
zoom out,
proprietary, so they're
and they're
not following
proprietary, right,
yeah.
right. So every single observability tool will have a different way of you entering this query. Some do it through UI, some have a specialized SQL-like variant of the language, but essentially SQL is one of the languages that we can all kind of align on. Everybody knows it to some degree.
And
so this
some
is
do
just
have this. Grafana, for example,
right,
has it. If you have it set up to timescale
right,
DB, and you
right.
can write SQL to sort of quasi get your index columns out.
But it's to get people thinking in terms of querying on events. That's the skill here. Querying on events to answer questions, and that means we need to start thinking in terms of these events, things that have happened in the past, and then you can translate this SQL into whatever language, whatever UI your observability tool.
Perhaps if we get technical, like where would you store these events? Would you store these events adjacent to, like, would you store these events in an error tracker in logging software? Would you store these events inside the database itself? I mean, if it's event sourced, then of course, no problem, right? If it's in an event source system, this problem gets solved for free. But if it's not an event source system, would you store it in the same database that the production environment is running on? Because maybe it's multiple, and then the common denominator is usually some form of logging software, and cloud-based logging software usually comes at a high cost of egress. And if you're now transmitting all of your logs for a certain time period to an external tool in order to do John's secret observability, some people get anxious that maybe storing them is expensive, or worse, egressing them to John's magic tool might be expensive.
Right.
Does that come up? Is that
all the time?
All the time. Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
When I give my talks at conferences, every single talk I've ever given, somebody says, "How do we do this without going bankrupt?" That's the question over and over again. I don't have any easy one-sentence answer to that.
So it is expensive. Like, we need to be aware that there is a cost.
It can be. However, the key is finding a way of the value scaling with the cost. If it's double the cost, but you're getting double the value from your observability tool, no problem, right? You can justify that. So the problem is when sorry, go on.
So raising the question of how do I make this cheaper is already a healthy sign of going the right direction, rather than avoiding altogether due to anxiety, due to cost, but then you don't really find your bugs, and then you're just incurring more costs, opportunity costs, etc.
This is why starting with the question is critical, because if you've got a specific question and you add just enough data to answer that question, hopefully you're not going to be blowing your budget out of the
wall. So you're not logging everything, just known acute questions, and you might not even keep the logs only until you answer the question, so you have some control.
In a previous company, our observability bill was getting quite sizable, and I did a bit of digging, and in a day and a half I reduced our logging cost by 40%. And
that's huge. That's huge in your resume. That goes straight into the resume.
Right. and the first thing I realized when I analyzed the logs, we were logging the string OK 400 million times a month.
I see.
These are the kind of things that blow your budget. And then metrics as well. Metrics, you've got to be very, very careful with dimensions and metrics, and I'll talk about that if you want. But,
We're sort of coming towards the end. Is there anything you would like to share? A link or plug? Or...
Yes. So I have put up this course. It is a free, it's the first module of what I hope will become the course on observability on the internet, basically.
From zero to incident superhero. Nice. That has a nice ring to it.
Thanks. So it's
who is this for, seniority wise?
Right. So this is for senior plus engineers. So senior staff, principal engineers who want to actually understand what observability is all about, You need no experience in observability. You don't need to be an SRE or have ever even admined a cluster, no Kubernetes experience, anything like that. You just need to be a programmer who's, worked on full stack apps before.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is I'm going to take you from zero observability knowledge to practically debugging an actual issue in a real life app and fixing it and seeing how that flow works.
Mm-hmm. And if they don't do it, like what behavior does somebody do by default that they would benefit from? Like what is the bad
What's
behavior
the
that you're?
alternative?
Yeah.
What's the alternative? The alternative is watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos.
No, I mean, like, what is their default behavior that you're retraining?
Right. Okay. Default behavior is go to your logs, search them, not really understanding, go to the error tracking tool. It kind of makes sense. Guess, maybe we'll put that into the backlog. Maybe we'll do it later. It's not that critical right now, right? Oh, but it keeps coming up. Yes, but we've got all these features to deliver, folks. We can't keep going around this. The app's really slow. Look, we'll worry about that when we get some funding. When we get some major funding coming in, we can fix the slowness and then customers will be happy. Oh, our major customer isn't happy, blah, 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 blah. And then the other thing is like, let's say I had another client come to me recently with this performance slowdown, and we figured out that by adding 3 events into his app, we could figure out which customers it was happening for. So it's a sense that like, this is a problem, but I just don't know how big a problem it is right now. The traditional way would be guess, maybe put it to the backlog, have endless discussions with the team. I think this, I think that, I think the other. Reasoning with no data, that's the other pattern I see.
Because you're reasoning on aggregated data, so you don't, then you have to recategorize them.
Or even reasoning based on guessing. I think this, I think that. Well, let's measure it. How do we measure it? Oh, I don't think we can.
Okay.
Versus being able to ask a specific question, enter data into the observability tool. And I would also say, whatever tool you're using right now, so many people aren't using it to its maximum ability. So I'm not up for like saying to people, oh, you need to add a new tool, add a new this. No. Take what you've got right now, what most teams are using, even if it's just an error tracking tool, is perfectly sufficient. It's just getting the correct data into that tool so that you can start to reason about your system. And I would also say it's a virtuous cycle. It seems really intimidating at the beginning, but once you add a tiny little bit of observability, you see it, you start to actually understand what's going on. It sets up a positive reinforcement cycle. Oh, hang on, I figured that out. What else do we not know about?
John, does this academy, this course, have a cost, a price?
It's free.
It's free.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
is it? It's self-paced. You sign up. There's some advice there. So anybody, I think the right time to do it would be you have a problem. You just sign up there, and it'll help you debug it live. Is that the promise?
Kind of. The promise is I'll take you through an example. It's essentially a tutorial. I'll take you through an example. It's in a Rails app, but you don't need to know anything about Ruby or Rails. I've given you all the code that you need in the course. There's videos of me, there's sample code. I'll walk you through it. And then from that, you can apply those same principles in your app with your code base, with your problem domain. It takes about 2 to 3 hours for people to work through it.
Okay.
It's the first module. Modules after that will be paid for, make it very affordable. But this free module gives you everything you need to get started with observability. It's only focused on structured logging. So I'm not talking about traces or metrics. I'm not going to bamboozle you with 100 different types of signal that you need to add into your app. It's just starting with logging because in my experience, logging is the place where I've started. It's most accessible to engineers and it can give you a bit more information on your problem.
Okay. Chat, this is the last chance you get to ask John something. John, I'm sure somebody's now typing very fast in on their phone, on a toilet, during their lunch break. What do you wish people, what do you wish I asked you about observability regarding what we discussed, or even technicalities?
I think probably...
What did I miss?
What
did I miss asking you? Yeah.
What did you miss? So, there are a whole load of videos on YouTube about observability. There are conferences, there are books. why does this still keep coming up?
Hmm.
Like, we've got all the theory, so surely we should just be able to read the theory and then implement it, right? Like, there's been quite a lot written about observability. And my answer to that would be, and I think the missing piece is these 5 steps that I showed.
Mhm.
It's the, why are we doing this? It's almost like those teams, I'm sure you've seen this, Dennis, where they say, we want to do TDD. And you go, great. Why do you want to do TDD? And they go, just because it's good.
I simplified it. Nowadays, I just ask them, okay, it's super easy. Why aren't you doing it right now?
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So,
So I would say this is not a problem related to observability at all. Right?
yeah. So
We
it's
need to be
clarity
doing
on how to start, or even clarity on why we're doing it,
why
or
we're
how it's
doing it.
useful.
Right.
Yeah.
Why is it useful?
Or what is the thing that we're replacing? Like, well, what they might not
Right.
even be aware of the bad
Right.
behavior or the
I
inefficient behavior.
mean, look, we've got an error tracker. We're paying for this as a company. Cool. We've got an observability tool. We're paying for it.
Mhm.
Right. We're paying for all these engineers. So what's the problem?
But it does feel like an area where we're trading financial efficiency for efficacy, like where we're improving how much money we can throw at debugging in order to make the time shorter. Is that
Yeah, I feel like a lot of companies do treat it observability as a bit of a tick box exercise.
yeah
We've got 10% of our budget going to this tool. Cool. Well, we're all good then.
yeah
And actually, it's way more important to have the mindset. It's the
the
mindset
processes in
business
place?
and
Yeah.
the processes and
Yeah.
the experience of going around that cycle.
So what you're basically saying is that with an observability process, with an observability mindset, you want engineers to stop trying to reproduce something they don't understand on their local machine,
Right.
but
Exactly.
instead just, hey, the answer is on production. The screen you have opened 99% of the time should be the production environment, should be the logs,
Right.
should be the adding new logs if they're missing, adding new categories if they're missing, trying to formulate your question in a way that makes sense to a machine.
Yeah.
Okay. So, stating the obvious.
Yeah.
Final question.
Yeah.
Unless there's somebody. No, not yet. Okay. Maybe it's not the final question. Maybe that person is still. When we talk about asking a question of a machine, in 2025, the first thing that comes to my mind is LLMs, AI, and in this particular context, MCP. So a observability-oriented MCP tool, why didn't that happen yet?
It has.
Okay, can you tell us more about that?
Most major observability vendors are in the process of building an MCP or already have one. And so
MCP, for those who don't understand, or if it's too left field for our session today, it is the ability to hook up something like ChatGPT or Cloud Code to your organization's private and sensitive repository of logs, of the observability of the error tracking logs, of the structured logs, in order to have the LLM basically read everything, and then you type in plain English or sort of, and it helps you figure out what the issues are.
So I would say MCP AI, in terms of observability, is a force multiplier. But I focus on...
So if you don't have the process in place, you don't
Right.
need that. So the
Right.
process comes first. Makes
The
sense.
process comes first, the mindset comes first, and then MCP is like adding fuel into the tank. It's just accelerating you. I've used MCPs for observability stuff and it's great, but you need to have the data there. You need to know what question you're answering. You need all of this kind of mindset, and then the MCP works absolutely beautifully well in some cases, not in others, obviously.
Beautiful. Well, with that, I think I would love to wrap up. I would like to thank you for your time and for your care and passion into this subject. To our live viewers who are with us, to everybody participating in chat, to Victor, Anjana, hello. I see you joined on Substack. To Victor, to Maria, who has raised the question, your audience, Marco and Eddie and Andy, thank you so much for being here today. This session is being streamed to multiple platforms. Some of those are John's new channel, some of those are my new channel. If you like what you heard here and we'd like to stay informed, give us a follow, give us a like, subscribe to that platform of your choice. It'll also help us figure out which platform you like watching on, because we are sort of shotgunning the entire spectrum right now. Yes, thank you so much, John. Any last words?
Thank you so much for having me, Dennis. It's been a pleasure. Great questions. Great conversation.
Awesome. I would like to debrief with you, and I'll take the stream offline now. So